لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I've been requested by my teacher, Shaykh Faraz Rabbani, to say a few words regarding the coronavirus crisis. And I've been thinking about this issue for several days now. And I've been thinking about how I should frame it. And I really cannot think of anything better or more appropriate than what our teacher Sheikh Nukeller said a few days ago when he stated that what we are witnessing right now is the manifestation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's Jalal, or His Majesty. When we look at what past ulama stated about events that unfold on this earthly plane, what we find is that ulama mention that these are all manifestations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's names. So when we look at the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what we find is that there are specific names that give a very jamali meaning, right? They indicate jamal or beauty. So when we think of Ar-Rahman, the merciful, or when we think of Ar-Razaq, the one who gives creation its sustenance, these have a very jamali connotation to them, as opposed to other names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, such as Al-Jabbar and Al-Qahhar and Al-Muhaymin. These are names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that have a more majestic connotation to them. And they often indicate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's dominion and control and utter power over this created realm. Now, death is something that we experience on a daily basis. There's no day where we don't see the news and are made aware of what's happening in places like Syria or China or, various other areas in which death and destruction are constant. But this is really the first time where we've seen something that has effectively made the world go still. The only people who can remember something as globally impactful as an event like the coronavirus are those who lived through World War II. We've never seen anything like this in our recent memory. And so what we're seeing is we are seeing the Jalal or the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at full display, right? That there is illness and death all around us. There is uncertainty all around us. And there is nothing that we as human beings can do. We are totally at the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's immense power. His immense power and control and dominion over the universe is manifesting before our very eyes at this moment. Now, one incident in the life of the Prophet ﷺ that really keeps repeating in my head every single time I think about how we as individuals should react to this particular event is when the Prophet ﷺ and his community experienced an eclipse. When these people experienced an eclipse, it was a very big deal to them, right? And so the narrations that have come describing what the Prophet ﷺ did when an eclipse occurred in Medina, they mention that he was very alarmed. He was so alarmed that he literally jumped up from where he was sitting, dragging his garment, rushed to the masjid, musta'jilan, right? In a very hurried manner, he went to perform a prayer. And he continued praying and leading his community in prayer until the eclipse was over. And then he taught his companions a valuable lesson. He told them that these are ayats of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends. And one of the reasons He sends these signs is to create khawf, takhweef, is to instill fear into the hearts of human beings in general and believers in specific. And this becomes the fuel that the believer takes to turn back to his Lord, right? These are the signs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends to remind us constantly that we need to turn back to Him in every moment of our life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly repeating these signs. Some signs are small, some signs are in our face, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, يُرِيكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ, that He is showing us these signs so that we may reflect and so that we may utilize our reason to understand that there is something greater behind these signs, that these signs are pointing to something and someone that we need to submit to, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so this crisis that we're facing is the same thing. It is an ayah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is manifesting this on this immense level in order to shake us out of our slumber, out of our ghafla, so we can once again return to Him in worship. And for those who will not return to Him, who will remain in ghafla, then this is actually a form of punishment for them. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for well-being in this life and the next. Now there are three main areas that I want to focus on, right, when it comes to any type of nasiha that I can provide to the believers and to our community at large. The first area concerns the individual. As individuals, we need to turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We need to increase our recitation of the Quran. We need to increase our dhikr. We need to increase our moments of contemplation regarding what is going on around us. We need to increase our salawat on the Prophet ﷺ, which the Prophet ﷺ said will take care of all of our concerns, right? Tukfa hammak, that they will take care of all of our concerns. And we need to cultivate ourselves spiritually. Khawf is not meant to be a perpetual condition. It is meant to be a seed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plants in us. These events are meant to be things that shake us to our core, but in a way that brings out other positive qualities. So when the Prophet ﷺ, when he sees the eclipse and he goes to pray, what is prayer? Prayer, he is thanking his Lord. He is in conversation with his Lord, right? He is expressing his love to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are things that are being nurtured out of that initial seed of fear. And so when we talk about takhweef, we're not saying just be in a constant state of dread or fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is doing is He is trying to wake us up and trying to push us towards being better believers and better individuals, and to inculcate in ourselves all the various spiritual states that the Prophet ﷺ had, including shukr and mahabba and taqwa and so on and so forth, right? So we need to focus on our ibadah. Enough of the debates, enough of the hating on each other. Let's focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Because if we're not going to focus on Him at this moment, then when are we going to focus on Him? When are we going to turn to Him? The second domain that we need to focus on is the family, right? One of the things that really struck me about this event was how many people, when the masajid were being closed, how many people were saying, oh my God, that's it. The masajid these are the pillars of our iman, and when they go, then what's going to happen to the community? One of the pillars of our iman is the household as well. It is the family. It is the responsibility of parents to instill in their children the values of this deen. We need to be instilling in our children an understanding of this deen. We need to be cultivating them spiritually in a way that if all the masajid in the land are closed down, we are still confident that our children will be able to ride this wave of calamity with positiveness, with rida of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with an understanding of what faith demands from them. And so we need to take more responsibility. We cannot simply outsource our children and their learning to the madaris, to the mosque, to the maktab, and nothing happens at home. Now we are in a position where schools are closed, where work is closed, where the responsibility is finally on us once again to make our home the masjid and to make our home the madaris and the makatib. And this is a responsibility that we need to take seriously. And finally, on a community level, there are going to be a lot of people who are in pain, who are suffering, who will die, who will be sick, who will not be able to find basic supplies, who will not be able to take care of themselves. And so we need to step up as a community. We need to look out for those around us. We need to ensure that we maximize benefit as believers and we minimize harm. And what that means is, firstly, we take the guidelines of experts and the government seriously when it comes to things like self-isolation, when it comes to things like social distancing, right? Because we are minimizing harm to the community. Secondly, we go out of our way to help those around us. I have 2 neighbors right next door to me. One is an individual who's had 2 strokes, right? Very elderly person. Another is someone who has cystic fibrosis, right? An underlying health condition. Both are very elderly. And so me and my wife have been reaching out to them. Do you need anything? Do you need help? You don't have to make a big splash. You don't have to be, Bill Gates dropping $1 billion in charity or whatever. Do what you can in the best way you can do it, right? Check up on your neighbors. Check up on your family members. If you can go beyond that, it's great. Go beyond that. But try to be a positive influence on the community in this very trying and calamitous time. And inshallah, I hope that Nasiha benefits everyone. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to turn to Him in this very trying moment. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep you safe, to keep your family safe. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to truly appreciate the blessings that He has given us and to utilize those blessings in the best way possible. I urge everyone to work on themselves as individuals and to work on their families and to work for the betterment of the community through their ibadah, through sadaqah, through a cheerful smile, through a type of heroic generosity that the believer is called upon to carry out, a type of futuwa that puts others before oneself. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله.